Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me in this late afternoon session for Playwright test automation. I hope you are having fun in this conference. I certainly do. My name is Attila, and I worked quite a bit with Playwright. So I thought that today I would try and teach something new to you about architecture and how easy it is in reality to implement a simple and functioning test automation solution with Playwright. How many of you have used Playwright before? Please put up your hands. Nearly everyone, that's perfect. So you are absolutely not new to this topic. OK. Great. So just one second. Yes. So before we start, a question. Why does architecture matter at all in test automation? Well, the answer is really simple. The test automation solution is also a software product like anything else we develop. All right? It must be reliable. I think that goes without question. Like, if we are not able to trust the test automation solution, how are we able to trust the end results and that we have a quality product on our hands? The test automation solution, it must be maintainable on the long run, because if you are not able to maintain your solution, then it is only draining money and resources and energy, and it can be extremely frustrating on the long run to work with it. So architecture is extremely important when it comes to test automation solutions. And I'm clicking the... Yes, sorry, I was clicking the wrong button. OK. Today's topic is the generic test automation architecture. What is the generic test automation architecture at all? I first met this concept or model in my ISTQB preparation material. And I was a bit confused about it at first sight. So I decided to demystify it for you. It is basically a template for the implementation of a test automation solution. Simple as that. Everything that matters is included in this model. It intends to guide engineers towards a well-structured and functional solution that we can use in our everyday work. In other words, this is a very generic, and it is a very generic blueprint of a model. That is to say, it is not really about the means, but it is about the goal. It is very generic, which means that it is tool independent. It doesn't matter which tool we want to use, Playwright, Cypress, Selenium, or any other test automation tools. It is going to work pretty well with it. But as I said, it can be really confusing to interpret. But despair not, I'm here to help you today to make sense of it. A quick disclaimer before we started. This is not the only implementation that is possible. Of course, we who work in software development, we know that every problem has at least a dozen different possible solutions. So this is just one of them. And this is probably not even the most complex implementation. This is just a very, very simplified version of it, so that we can quickly put together something meaningful and useful, right? This is merely a demonstration of how the generic test automation architecture can be quickly turned into something practical and useful that you can use in your everyday work, supplemented with some code examples and other tools on the go. All right. Let's start with the test generation layer out of the four. This is the first one. The test generation layer is responsible for deriving executable test cases from high-level test models, specifications, or requirements. Okay? So for example, we can start with the system must reject invalid logins, and we transition to try logging in with the wrong password and check for error messages. Okay? It also transforms abstract test conditions into concrete test cases by applying predefined rules constraints or algorithms. So again, we go from, for example, check input validation towards entering an empty username, for example, or entering a too long password. This layer ensures test coverage and consistency through systematic rules or algorithms while automating test case design. Okay? In other words, you're not missing important test cases, that is to say coverage, and that your tests are then generated in a consistent way every time. If this is a bit complex, don't worry. I have a much simpler example for you through Playwright to demystify all this that I have been talking about. So basically, with Playwright, what we do, as I said, we take these models and test data, and we use something that we call a code generator in Playwright, which is a really handy tool. It can fire up your application, and it can create a starting point for your automated test test solution, a script that you can use to start your automation journey with Playwright. This is also a golden opportunity to cooperate with your colleagues, for example, your developers and designers, because you can use all levels of the system to extract information and test cases. For example, from the Figma design drawings. Okay. But then we go over to the test definition layer, which is the next layer in the model. The test definition layer specifies the detailed test scripts and data needed for execution. It defines the sequence of actions, input values, expected results, and automation logic, bridging the gap between abstract test cases from the test generation layer that we had before and actual test execution. In the case of Playwright, we also use this layer to refactor and optimize the code generated by the code generator tool. Okay? We create reusable methods and test data and so on. That is to say, we go from the more abstract first draft of automated test scripts to a refined and well-organized test library. What is a test library? Well, it is basically a collection of reusable test scripts, functions, and data that standardize and streamline test execution. Playwright is at the core in our case. And this is how it looks like when it comes to Playwright. This is a very simple structure of a Playwright test library. Okay? So you grab your favorite text editor. For example, if you are using TypeScript with Playwright, you can use Visual Studio Code. And you can create your test files together with the helper methods and the wrappers to create your test library. Of course, you can opt for a more complex test automation solution with solutions like, for example, the page object model. This here, as I said, is just a very simple example that we can use. Okay? If you organize your code in a nice and neat way, you spare a lot of boilerplate code, and it makes your code, your test automation solutions code, much more maintainable on the long run. So again, organizing the architecture in general is extremely important. Okay. The next one is the test execution layer. So what is the test execution layer? This is the layer that actually runs the automated tests against the system under test. So basically, this is the most exciting part of the test automation model, because this is the one that we are most interested in. It is responsible for controlling the flow of execution, making sure tests run in the right order with the right setup and teardown. Which is, of course, again, extremely important. Because with the wrong setup, it's just not possible to properly test your system. Okay? It communicates with the test harness or the framework. In our case, for example, the Playwright test runner. And it sends commands to the system under test, and it collects results, which is, again, one of the most important part of this journey, since the results are what are telling us in what status our system's quality have. It also handles logging and reporting, so you can trace what happened during the run, which is equally important, because if you have bad reporting mechanisms at place, it is basically impossible to trace back the different bugs and the problems in your system. Yes. So this is how it looks like in practice, and probably this is the most complex part of this whole system. How many of you have used GitHub Actions before? Okay, not that many actually, but how many of you have heard about it at all? Okay, like half of you. GitHub Actions is a fantastic tool. I can only recommend it. It's pretty easy to use it. You can have a workflow file in your test automation solution. It's basically a YML file where you set up a schedule. How often do you want GitHub Actions to run your test automation solution? It's a cron job, so you can customize it however you want. And then step by step, you specify what actions GitHub wants you to take. Okay. This is basically the core. This is running your automated solution. But it's very easy to set up, and it's extremely useful. Playwright has built-in reporters. When it comes to reporting, Playwright has built-in reporters, has all different kinds of reporters, whatever you need for your project. But one of my personal favorites is the HTML reporter, because it's basically a graphical user interface. It's very easy to understand, it's very easy to use, and it's very straightforward. It can show the different screenshots that the test automation solution has taken during its run. It can show stack traces and error messages. It's very, very useful. And you can also show it to people who might lack the technical knowledge to understand more complex reports. So this is basically a user-friendly solution for everyone. However, if you need more logging, let's say you want to log the results of different functions, or you want to output some extra technical information that not everyone has to see, you can implement it with, for example, Winston. Winston is a very simple logger that is creating a log file just for you. And all these reports, they can be uploaded to GitHub Actions. And you can download it, for example, every morning when the test run is done. And then you can just enjoy the bug reports. Not if you're a developer, but as a tester, you might enjoy them. And in addition, Playwright also has some built-in custom reporters that you can customize to your own liking. I made, for example, a reporter that is sending a message to Slack with a collection of the test names that failed, the test files that failed, which I think is fantastic because it's just there for everyone. So again, it's very user-friendly, and you can include any information you want to share with your team, and it is immediately available for everyone after the test run is just done. I think that's it for this part. And then the last layer in our journey is the test adaptation layer. Okay? The test adaptation layer acts as a bridge between the test automation framework and the system under test. It's quite straightforward, I think. It includes adapters, drivers, and interfaces that enable automated tests to interact with the system under test components, ensuring compatibility and proper execution. How does it look like with Playwright? Well, it's all about interaction. Okay, so you have a graphical user interface, and Playwright has different tools that enables the runner to interact with the graphical user interface. You can use locators and attributes. You can use different fixtures, custom methods, and API interactions to interact with the system under test. What is even better and probably more practical is the test ID, which is very custom, which you can make it custom, because locators and attributes, they can change over time, but the test ID is something static, so you can always count on that ID that is always going to be there, and your test automation solution is always going to find it. So probably it's a good practice. So it's all about interaction. This is the test adaptation layer. And once we are done with all these 4 stages, we have the complete architecture. The best part. Maybe it looks a bit complex if we put everything together, but I think now that we have gone through all the 4 layers one by one, I think this is pretty understandable, and it's not that complicated after all. But if we just look at the generic test automation architecture model without any specific example, it can be a bit confusing and hard to understand. So just to quickly recap, when it comes to management, you can use your favorite management tool, like, for example, Jira or Azure DevOps. And you can use Playwright to generate your code that you need to refine with the help of your favorite text editor, whichever that is, for example, Visual Studio Code. You can combine Playwright with other tools, like, for example, GitHub Actions, Winston logging, even Slack, if you want to. And basically, that's it. You have a simple yet functional running test automation solution that you can further develop and make it more complex, more robust over time. I think that is all that I had to say about this topic. I hope I was able to teach you some new concepts. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Thank you very much. So we have time, we have 10 minutes for questions, so I would like to encourage you all, if you would like to ask about Playwright, this is the time. And there's no questions yet, so I start. Always Playwright or other tools sometimes? Which is your pick?
No, it's absolutely not necessarily Playwright. I think it is very important to research what your project needs. So, for example, if you have a project that intends to have mobile applications, then probably Playwright is not the best tool to simulate and emulate mobile interfaces. You can choose a different tool for that. So it's always worth researching your project and what it needs. So I'm not like a Playwright evangelist. I don't say that you always have to use Playwright, but Playwright is a very handy tool that can quickly turn your ideas into a functional test automation solution.
Okay, we have the first question arrived. What about all your configs environments? I'm missing that in your architecture, the practical implementation.
Sure. I wasn't sure if we have time for all that, but Playwright is extremely flexible when it comes to configurations, especially environments and different setups. So Playwright absolutely supports setting up different projects or sub-projects inside your test automation solution. One of them can target, for example, Chrome. Your next project can target Firefox or WebKit. It doesn't matter. And Playwright can be customized in a million different ways. But I have to maybe give you a little bit of warning here. what you have to think about is that it's not only Playwright that you have to set up, but also the other tools as well. For example, GitHub Actions. Okay? A quick example is that your Playwright test automation solution has a runtime, and you have to set a limit to it. Okay, how much time can we wait for Playwright to finish its job? And when do we have to terminate it? You add the limit maybe 30 minutes. But what you have to think about is that GitHub Actions also has a limit. You also have to set it up, and you have to synchronize it. Because, for example, you might give Playwright, I don't know, 30 minutes to run, but your GitHub Actions is stopping after 20 minutes. Then your Playwright doesn't have enough time to finish its job before GitHub terminates. Okay, so you have to synchronize different tools here.
Okay, next question. What can be the pitfalls of integrating your test automation repo with GitHub Actions?
Well, I gave you just an example. It can be a pitfall. It can be quite challenging. On a smaller repository and on a smaller test automation solution, it's relatively easy to set it up. But if you have a robust and large test automation solution, it can be a challenge to synchronize everything, including the timer for GitHub Actions, for Playwright, and all the different actions that the test automation solution is taking.
Okay, could all of this work in Azure DevOps pipelines as well?
I believe so. I don't see why not.
Okay.
I think so. I have to admit that I have never tried it with Azure DevOps pipelines, but I'm 99% sure that it should work.
Okay, is it possible to have BDD reports with Playwright reporting?
I am not sure what type of reports. Is that behavior-driven development?
What BDD stands for. So who has the question in the audience? Okay, can you please specify?
I can't really hear
Can you please come here closer and specify a question, because we cannot hear you.
Yes.
You mentioned that Playwright can create HTML reports.
Yes.
And what, in case you have BDD test scenarios, can Playwright produce these kind of reports as well, or?
Okay, can you please repeat the question in the microphone?
So the question is whether Playwright is able to create this behavior-driven development regarded or aimed reports as well.
For example, if you have a scenario, can Playwright configure to generate these kind of reports? Because the user is sometimes.
I don't really think so, to be honest. I think this is a tool used for different purpose. I wouldn't use that in that way, but possible that I'm wrong. So if anyone has different ideas, you can correct me, but I don't think so.
Okay, just let's jump to the next question. What about Allure reporting or other reporting tools? How do you integrate them?
We used Allure before. I have never implemented the Allure reporting myself, but Allure reporting is absolutely possible. We did it, and it was automated together with GitHub Actions, so it should work. But the actual implementation and how it was done, I am not sure about that, because I personally have never done it before. But on the project where I was working, we did it together with other test automation engineers, so it should be possible, yes.
Okay, we have 4 more minutes for questions. Is Playwright good at waiting for web elements to load on websites?
It is as patient as you set it up to be. Actually, as I said, Playwright is highly customizable. So you can customize the waiting time for the different actions that Playwright is doing. So if you wanted to wait for a long time for web elements to load, you can do that. but by default, it doesn't wait too long. So if you use, for example, I don't know, lazy loading, and you have to wait for elements to load, it can be a bit more complicated. So you have to find a solution for that. And also, if you tamper with the default setup of how long time Playwright should wait for different elements to load, again, you have to consider timeouts. So for example, my Playwright test automation solution is going to run for a longer time than what is allowed by GitHub Actions before GitHub Actions times out. So again, this is actually quite complex to synchronize once you start tampering with the basic setups.
OK, regarding your experience, what things are hardest to implement in Playwright? Everything is easy. No.
Everything is super easy peasy. Well, that is a good question. For example, I had a scenario where we had a web application with lazy loading. That was a bit of a challenge because Playwright started to scroll down the screen and it did not load in time. So we had to find a solution on how to have the elements already available for Playwright. So that can be a challenge, for example. But I also worked on a larger application that was basically a school learning, like a learning platform for school children in Norway. And it was a robust and complex system that needed interaction with the server. So you clicked on something, it sent in the answer, for example, during a test, and it had to wait for the answers to come back, calculate points, and so on. So when it has to wait for different interactions, that can be quite complex to implement with Playwright.
And your last question for today, isn't test execution layer about test runners and its features, like unit, PyTest, etc.?
Isn't test? That's a good question. As I said, you can have different implementations, so probably. But this is how I interpreted it, and this is how I built up this model. So possible that you can have a different interpretation and a different actual implemented model. But I'm afraid that that I won't be able to answer this question in any more depth. I'm sorry.
OK, with that, I think we can close. Leah, please come in person and ask Attila about his answer. Thank you very much. Another warm round of applause for Attila for his speech about Playwright.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.